This is Maxine Dovere for Analista Studio in New York with Dr. Nazee Moinian.
Hello, Maxine.
Hello, Nazee. So good to have you with us.
So good to see you again.
Thank you, thank you. Nazee has a unique journey. As one may gather from her name, her heritage is Iranian. But Nazee, you were not in Iran for the majority of your life. Tell us a bit of your history.
I'm Iranian American. I was naturalized right after my marriage in New York City. I left Iran around the onset of the Islamic Revolution. And literally I arrived on December 13 and sat at an American high school class in 8th grade. A day later.
So you were a young teenager.
I was a preteen at the time, but I jumped to 2 grades because we had advanced education in Iran. The memory is very much part of my life. It's very vivid. It's just as if it happened yesterday. We became gradually American and we absorbed the culture and language very quickly.
Being your parents, you?
It was me, my brother, and my mom that had left Iran at the very beginning, and then my father and the rest of the family joined later.
But your journey is not typical of an American immigrant. You've been many, many places and accomplished many, many things. Your doctorate.
It's kind of wild for me also, and I have to tell you, I feel very privileged. I was always curious about the world affairs. I was a precocious child. I remember I was riding a bus. I must have been 8 or 9 years old. And in Iran in those days, as soon as you were 6, you walked to school on your own and back, and you went to supermarket shopping. You ran your errands, and you really didn't need supervision. It was very safe. So I was on the bus listening to conversation between a Chudori woman, a woman under hijab, a traditional woman, and her son.
Pre-revolution under hijab.
About 3 years pre-revolution. Yes, Iran was a mixed society country. We had very modern, bikini-clad, sunbathing in Saint-Tropez people, if they could afford it. We had a large middle-class population that generally came to being under the Shah of Iran. And then we had the poorer sections that were traditional hijabi, bazari, and went by the edicts of Quran.
Interesting. Many people think of that period of enlightenment under the Shah as basically reflecting Europe, basically reflecting middle-class Europe.
Not far from Europe, actually. If I were to draw a parallel between our lifestyle in Iran and US and Europe, I would say we were more European than we were American. We listened to French songs, we listened to American songs, we listened to British songs, but we were more culturally similar to Europe.
Interesting. And expected. You were obviously geographically closer.
Yes.
From those days in Iran to America, did your family come to New York initially?
We went to the airport. We sat on a plane, Pan Am. We flew to London and we came to New York. Again, landed on December 13 on a snowy night. And then the next morning, my life in America began.
A life that has been vibrant and rich and influential. Your life in America, you went to school in New York?
I went to school in New York. I went to college in New York. I went to universities in New York. And then, as you said, I did my doctorate in St. Andrews in
St. Andrews.
Yes.
A little bit before Catherine and William.
No, actually, about 5 years after. My doctorate is kind of new. I'm a doctorate now only 3 years. I raised my kids. As you know, I have 5 kids. And then I realized that I really needed to be an expert in the field that I like.
It's a very important credential.
Thank you.
And what is the field?
My doctorate is in Iranian studies, and I look into Iranian history and culture to assess its behavior now, its foreign policy behavior now. So I draw on the cultural aspects of the Iranians. I draw on the civilizational aspects of Iranian, their poetry, their prose, their Shiite doctrine, to explain the behavior of the Iranian regime today.
The involvement in Iran of the Jewish community has been historic,
Right.
thousands and thousands of years. The population in the main has left.
Right.
What I understand to be the volume of population is about 13,000 at the moment. Is that correct?
It's a range. We still don't know how many there are in Iran. I've heard as low as 8 and as high as 18.
Mm-hmm.
So 13 is right in the middle exactly. I would say that's correct.
So it's a good talking number. Recently, there was a tragic incident of a young man, a young Jewish athlete, who became involved in a brawl with a Muslim boy,
Right.
and the Muslim boy died.
Right.
Iran has some kind of a culture that allows those accused of crimes to be bought out if the family of the victim agrees.
Exactly.
And in this case, there were thousands and thousands of dollars offered,
Right.
but nothing was accepted, and the boy was executed.
Correct.
How has that affected the security of the Jewish community that remains?
That's interesting you asked that question, because that's the question I put to two Israeli highly regarded IDF intelligence officers yesterday. And I said, I've heard rumors that the Jews are being prosecuted and persecuted with as big as 8 people hanged. Is that correct? And they looked into it and they got back to me and they said, not that they know of. And this is IDF intelligence speaking. It seems as if miraculously the Iranian regime has stayed hands off to the population of Iranian Jews in Iran. I can think of many reasons and no reasons at the same time, because again, explaining the behavior of this regime is like trying to forecast the weather next year. By and large, it's a precarious situation for Jews in Iran, but it's a precarious situation for Jews around the world, unfortunately. I can't imagine, I can't even believe what I'm saying, but life under Iran in many ways under the Shah was much less anti-Semitic than life in the Western world right now.
That is a very sad and true point when you draw an analogy between life for Jews in Iran under the Shah as a safe haven in comparison to what we have now. We, all of us, need to be terribly aware and terribly conscious of this new situation for Jews. We are in the middle of a semi-negotiated, semi-peace in the general world. That war, that peace or lack of it, has certainly affected the Jewish communities worldwide. Can you comment on where the balance between the now 50-year history of this regime stands vis-a-vis, number one, negotiating with the West,
Right.
the United States, the West, and number two, its position of calling Israel Little Satan and America Big Satan? Where do all of these factors fit into this puzzle of what is Iran?
Just technically and literally speaking, peace is not an applicable word when it comes to dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran. It was founded on the belief that, and I'm not justifying it, here I am putting my doctoral hat on and trying to explain it to your audience. So the Islamic regime was founded on the principles of enmity to the Western civilization, because
Enmity to Western civilization.
Right. And they bundled Israel with that. And the doctrine comes from Muslim Brotherhood, who had this agenda of emancipating Muslim lands from Western influence and the Jews. And this is on the heels of
But how does that configure with the statement that the people of the book
Right.
are protected?
Well,
Is Israel not of the book?
Israel's people are people of the book, but Iranian Jews are under the protection of the Iranian state. So that's the difference they make. That you're Iranian Jews, but you're Iranian, and the ones in Israel are Zionists. And unfortunately, that distinction has even crept up into our narrative and conversations here in America and in Europe, that they make a distinction between being a Jew and being a Zionist, not thinking that if you're a Jew, your place of spiritual worship is in the Zion land, it's in the state of Israel. So back to that, Khomeini, who was the founder of the Islamic Revolution, had a personal vendetta about the Shah of Iran because he thought the Shah was westernizing the population, which he was, but not for any ulterior motives except that to push the country forward and out of poverty. So he had these 12 points of reforming the nation by agricultural progress, educational progress, emancipating women, creating family laws that are beneficial to women as well as men. It was a patriarchal society, and he was trying to balance it out and make it more Western.
The availability of education to young women of a college age really was cut after the revolution, and it became intact. And there was some continuity of women working in government, but everyone had a scarf at that point. Everyone had to ameliorate their individuality to the demands of the regime. And that certainly changed the life of many Iranians who left in consequence of the regime.
So there is a nuance to that, Maxine, and if I may, I want to clarify it for the viewers. Education is highly regarded in the Iranian society, whether it's under the Shah, under Khomeini, under the Islamic regime, under a constitutional monarchy, which is what the Shah had. So when you say education was cut, that's not entirely true. Revolution upended the momentum of the society. So a lot of colleges and universities were closed at the time of the revolution just because the country was going through a revolution. When they opened, they demanded that women come to the classes fully covered, or a headscarf, but a long headscarf with a long overcoat so they would hide their shape. Women obviously didn't like it, and they took to the streets, I think on March 8, 1980, to protest. And that sealed the deal that Khomeini would not budge, whether Iranian women protested, whether he promised Iranian women that you will have your own rights. He took away their rights, but he did not take away their right to education. So as a result, a generation later, women were more educated than men. Women in Iran are still more educated than men. About 60 to 70% of Iranian women are educated.
And how is the education applied if the restraints against women are in place?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So higher offices are closed to women. So women cannot run for president. They cannot be part of the Assembly of Experts. They cannot be part of the Guardian Assembly. But, you know, they are teachers and they're doctors, and they are professionals, bankers. They have their own businesses. It's a weird hybrid society right now in Iran, because there is this disconnect between the true Iranian identity and what the regime wants for its people, which is Islamic. And if you know any Iranian, including me, we're nationalists. We believe in a Iran that is for the Iranian people. And the majority of Iranian people right now, 90%, don't want this regime.
Can this be changed? Is there reality? 90% is a significant number.
It is.
And then 40,000 dead in result of actions against the regime is also a significant number.
Correct.
Where is the reality of change?
I wish I could answer that, Maxine. What we know for now, according to people that I'm not going to name names, but you know who I spoke with last night, change will happen when Iranians decide to.
Exactly.
And that was the consensus with the people that I was speaking, and that's not something new. That's something that we all know, that it's a huge country, 92 million people. It's a young country. Gen Z are change makers. They're out on the street. They're completely westernized. They speak English as if they're American. They listen to American pop songs. they want change. How much can they foment the change? It remains to be seen. What US and Israel have done together is they've weakened the regime, that it's really on its toes, downward spiraling economy, high inflation, 70% on regular stuff, and triple digits on food stuff. You buy bread in the morning and you pay double for the same bread in the afternoon. So imagine if you're on a small salary and you have to feed 5-6 people in the house, and the inflation is eating into your income the way it is now. The military is weakened. The Navy is completely destroyed, except for swift boats that they have. What hasn't happened is the ideology of the 10% that are regime supporters hasn't been harmed.
Now, with that condition that is now being somewhat ameliorated by a promise of $300 million in investment or return of funding or whatever the titular application is, but a huge amount of capital. What will the regime do with that? How will the regime look at that money for its people or its proxies?
Right.
And its proxies being Hezbollah, Hamas, other revolutionary movements, Houthis, that are in absolute anger and warfare against the West.
Right.
Will the regime take those dollars, use it to stop the inflation of bread and water?
Well, the promise of reconstructing Iran, the $300 billion that's supposed to be put up by Gulf countries, is a curious one, isn't it? Like, why do we want to rebuild the infrastructure of an enemy country? It's not like we're restructuring Japan or Germany after World War II. This ideology is still very much intact. I can tell you that there are huge technical problems with just that piece of memorandum of understanding. If you're going to rebuild Iran, you need to hire Iranian companies, workers, cement makers, steel producers, electricals, everything that involves into building a tunnel, a bridge, a building. Those are all under the aegis of the IRGC, the Islamic Republican Guard Corps. Funding it, making it prolific and profitable by their contracts that are corrupt, and sending this money back to their own coffers so they can empower themselves, but also empower the proxies. So in the combat between the proxies and the people, the money for the proxies has always been prioritized. Another aspect of that is, what are we building exactly? Because we are told, and we saw with our own eyes, that everything that was destroyed were military sites. There were military depots, ammunition depots, there were tunnels that were used for missile launchers, oil reserve depots.
Is a steel factory a military site?
If it's a dual-use factory, yes, it is a military site. If there are workers that work in a dual-use factory, they're also targeted by
according to the
laws of the international laws of war. But
so how can you build a civilian infrastructure if you are if your resources of construction, your steel, your construction has been damaged as material of war?
Right.
Where is the balance here?
Yeah. Well, I somehow, if that's going to happen, the Trump administration needs to define that. What we're going to rebuild, where does the money go to be rebuilt? And if we're not going to use the IRGC resources because they're considered a foreign terrorist organization by US, if they're an FTO organization, then we have to allow Pakistanis to come in, the Chinese to come in. Do we really
the Chinese would have no problem with that.
Exactly. Do we really want to give a bigger footprint to the Chinese to help Iran back on its feet?
Iran historically was part of the Silk Road,
right?
The Chinese Belt and Road philosophy of going into countries in current times and alleviating problems,
right,
while creating
opportunities for themselves.
Opportunities for themselves, exactly, and obligations of the country.
Right.
I think Israel is one of the few countries that has had a Chinese input. I speak specifically about the port in Haifa, or the port in Eilat, where the Chinese did come in, and when they said, hello, we want our 20 billion, the Israelis said, here it is.
Right.
This is not the normal pattern of the Chinese input.
Right. The problem with all of this is not whether the Chinese will be in Iran, or the Pakistanis, or whether even the Gulf countries will give Iran the 300 billion. The problem only stems from the nature of the Iranian regime.
Exactly.
If it was a democracy, if it was a forward-looking, not cult death kind of a state, nobody would have a problem helping Iran back on its feet. It's the nature of the state that creates the problem.
Which brings us back in a circular way to what you said originally, of the 90% of Iranian population not being in favor of this regime, and yet not being willing or able to rise against the regime.
Willing, I would say there are pockets of people, both in Tehran and other big cities, that have passed that test. We have had people gunned down with automatic rifles and military-style machine guns as far back as 2009, the Where Is My Vote Green Revolution. They came back out to the street in 2019, then again in 2022 for Women Life Freedom Movement, and then again now. So giving up their lives for the sake of freeing Iran, the stakes are so high that there is no consensus right now in the Trump administration on what to do about it.
Is there any validity to the position of the Shah's son and this small but loud movement within the Iranian American community to bring back the Shah? Is there any validity to that at all?
It's not that small, Maxine, and I just wanna flesh that out a little bit. The popularity of the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi is not uniquely oriented in the American diaspora, Iranian diaspora. Canadian Iranians are very much in supportive of the Crown Prince. Europeans, Iranians are very much supportive of the Crown Prince. So he has a broad swath of people in diaspora that support him, both financially, emotionally, if they can, physically, to come to his seminars, and intellectuals are gathered around him to be able to create a coalition that when the regime changes, they're on the ground running. That has already happened. That there is a group of people, of scientists and technocrats that want to rebuild Iran back. The
part of that 90%.
Yeah, well, 90% are in Iran. This is the diaspora. This is Iranians in diaspora. The people in Iran also chant the name of the Crown Prince because they're connected on internet. They see the difference between the heady days under the Shah of Iran, where he looked dashing and the queen was beautifully jeweled and dressed, and they were the toast of the town in Washington, in Paris, everywhere in Europe, and they had genial relationships with the Europeans. Nixon was a friend, Ford was a friend. There was this enamoration with the Shah and the Queen that they look back at nostalgically. And these are the grandchildren of the generation that grew up under the Shah. So they don't want this life. And
does the Shah, the Crown Prince, have a son?
The Crown Prince has 3 daughters. Interestingly, one of his daughters just got married 2 years ago to an American Jewish lawyer. So he has a Jewish son-in-law. I think the support he gets is well deserved. He has been extremely on point on his elaboration of what he has in mind for the future of Iran. He's been extremely democratic. Don't vote for me. come to the ballot box and vote for anybody you like. I'm only going to be here to help you achieve that step. And then if you want me in, I'm in. If you don't want me in, just vote me out. A problem that we have right now, if I can call it a problem, it's a condition really, and maybe it's a cultural handicap, is that Iranians themselves are kind of divided.
Mm-hmm.
And the infighting is taking the charm away from this hope for a free Iran.
If you had an opportunity to sit at the left ear or the right ear of the decision makers who are signing this MOU,
Right.
what would you tell them?
I think the president had all the right instincts about the regime. He was under no illusion that this regime is not going to reform, that it wants the death of the Western civilization, that America is the big Satan, it will forever be the big Satan, that it's a bad actor in the region. But every democratic leader, Maxine, sits at two tables. One is the outward-looking table towards the international community, where you have to make decisions on war and peace and trade deals and treaties,
Right.
and diplomacy. And one is the inward-looking table to your own people, where the policies you make outside in a diplomatic level or in a kinetic. So you asked before, how would I have advised if I had the right ear or the left ear
Right.
of the commander-in-chief? And I'd be honored to have that opportunity. I would advise the Trump administration, and I know there is division within the Trump administration on that, to keep the blockade, bring the blockade back on the Islamic regime. The blockade was working. The regime was bleeding $500 million, close to $500 million every day. And it came to a point where the commander of the IRGC is sitting across from an American reporter, and he's saying to the American reporter, give us our 20 billion. What is 20 billion to you?
Mm-hmm.
Give us our money. We need our money. That just showed how much of a trouble they're in financially, because they cannot not only fund the proxies, they cannot even fund the IRGC correctly. And the IRGC is the pillar of power, military power. The base.
If you don't have bullets, your guns are worthless.
Right. So I think I would advise the Trump administration to keep the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, continue the escorting of the regimes, the ships the way they were doing through the Strait of Hormuz, use the Omani lane, which Oman has offered actually, and squeeze them where it hurts, which is financially. I think it was a little too soon to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
Why did they do it?
Default answer, it seems to be, is the
Price of gas.
The price of gas and the midterm elections. They're two, and this goes back again to my assessment that there is a pull and push between outward-facing diplomacy and inward-facing national security interests within the country, which is the price of gas.
I think, Nazee, you are sitting in the wrong chair. You should be sitting in the Oval Office.
Thank you.
The level of understanding of Iranian culture, of understanding of the application of Shiite doctrine and law,
yes,
is one that I don't think is so subtle in the American diplomacy field, despite the new experience that some American diplomats are having.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I'd be happy to speak anywhere, which I actually am. I am a fellow at the Middle East Institute, an associate fellow. It's a job I take very seriously, and I try to spread the message as best as I can.
Nazee Moinian, you've been most generous with your opinions, with your facts, with your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. In New York with Nazee Moinian, a word, many words, on Iran and America, on Iran and Israel. Thank you.
Thanks again.